Production funding for the following program was provided in part by the National Endowment for the Arts.
Recently, there's been a dramatic increase in the impact of the crafts on Vermont's economy. Particularly in the crucial tourist market, the professional craftsperson is currently generating nearly as much consumer appeal as the state's famous scenery and seasonal recreation, and is fast becoming a principal ingredient of the Vermont mystique. Yet beyond the simple impression most people have that a craftsperson is something between a hobbyist and fine artist lies a vast array of human realities that give added meaning to the term craftsmanship. Working out of the mountaintop log house which he built and shares with his wife and 2 children, Jeremy Seeger has established himself as one of the foremost makers of Appalachian mountain dulcimers in the Northeast.
I started making dulcimers because I wanted one, and at the time I was in college and there was nobody to give me one, so I had to start making them to get one. And I worked out my own design and my own proportions and developed my instrument within the tradition, within the traditional design of dulcimer. I started out using only mahogany for the dulcimers. For the sound box, the neck and sides, I've always used cherry, but I've started using cherry and black walnut backs and then either a cedar or a spruce top. It's hard to say how much time it makes or takes to make a dulcimer from beginning to end, because I'm always working on a whole bunch at a time, and while I have parts drying or glue setting up, I'm working on new parts for dulcimers that are going to be started in a few weeks. I know that I have at least 10 hours in each instrument, probably more like 15. When I build my dulcimers, I try to make each one as good as I can. Then you try to maintain that quality over your production.
Armed with an array of pamphlets and mail-order forms, Seeger has only recently come to grips with the effects of an often geographically distant marketplace.
Living up in Vermont here, you're away from where most of your customers are. And that's what I'm working on now, is reaching the larger market.
The Seegers have designed a basic lifestyle that places a high value on self-sufficiency and strong family ties, deliberately far removed from the trappings, pressures, and conveniences of life in the mainstream.
People think we really rough it living up here on the mountain 2 miles from the main road, but we're perfectly comfortable. We stopped plowing the driveway when gasoline prices went up to $1. And we decided that we could walk it just as easily. And we try to buy our staples in bulk in the fall so that once the driveway snows over, we just have to carry in the fresh vegetables and milk and small things that we need. In our view, we're not roughing it at all. The only real thing that we're doing without it is 60-cycle electricity coming in. But that just means that you have to make your own adjustments to it. Far to the north, when the snow is almost gone, Marcel and the other workers go... The way I've tried to work my life is that I have the surroundings that I like, and I spend my life with my family, and that earning a living doesn't take me away from my family 9 to 5 or longer. There's not much that I would do different if I had to do it over again. We thought it out fairly well in advance and made our choices as we went along so that it's the way we want it.
You know, in these present times we have, and in Vermont, almost nobody's lot is easy, or at least things, the way people have to adjust is different. And speaking for myself, it's certainly getting more difficult.
At a time when economic pressures are forcing many craftspeople to reevaluate their methods, Ted Scatcherd is struggling to maintain the same solitary, subsistent life and work styles which have been as much his trademark as has the simple beauty of his pottery.
I do definitely work alone and by choice, and whatever the inefficiencies are, there are also benefits. And the benefits are more personal to me than financial. The life that I've been establishing has been based on being able to make choices almost every day of what needs doing, what needs to get done. And there are sometimes less and less options of those things to do because of the increased economic needs that I have to face and do something about. My interest is more in doing the job the way I want to do it. My effort isn't really rewarded by money, is not very much dependent upon number of dollars. My expenditure in time is more of a benefit that I give to myself, I guess, than a financial benefit. That my financial involvement with the world is not very great. It seems that I come out with enough money to pay the bills that I have, and it doesn't get anybody after me. One of my main cares and concerns is making the finest pottery that I can.
Aside from the everyday chores of procuring water from a distant well and culling the week's supply of firewood from a nearby woodlot, Scatcherd's studio time is further reduced by his part-time business selling and servicing pottery-making equipment.
Hi, this is Ted Scatcherd at Foreman Fire, and much of my physical existence here is really pandemonium and chaotic, and a few parts of my life are under control. The others just take what's left over, which leaves them relatively out of control. But it does not make a business picture. Much of the key to the happiness and satisfaction and ability that I have to work things out in the way that I have, in the way that brings me pleasure, as far as making my pottery without a big financial yield, and generally operating the way I do in a flexible way. And a lot of that I owe to this particular piece of ground.
When Deborah Landon decided 5 years ago to return to her native Vermont, her only concern was whether her transplanted stained glass business would prosper.
When I moved up from Boston, it was important for me to find out if I could make a living as a craftsperson in Vermont. And when I found out that, in fact, I could, and that in so many ways Vermont was really an ideal environment for me, I started realizing that there was something missing.
I don't think that isolation has to be a part of working in Vermont, but I think in my case it is, and I'm trying to find a way to make that less of a problem for me. I think that a lot of craftspeople in Vermont would prefer to work alone, would prefer to really live an isolated lifestyle, and that's why they're here. That isn't really the case with me. I like the country and, really love the country environment, but it's not the isolation, it's not the lack of people that I'm seeking.
Debbie, this is gorgeous, really. It's outrageous.
My commission work introduces me to a variety of people and situations. And it's that close on-location contact with people, trying to share their specific design problems, that gives my work that much-needed human relief. It's troubling that there has to be a distinction between art and craft. I've always felt strongly about my work as a fine art, but working in a medium that's traditionally been labeled a craft, I feel especially challenged to be as innovative and original as possible, given the need to make a living in a marketplace that seems to require definitions. When I moved to Vermont and moved from the urban situation, I found that I really could do a lot more work. I spent much more time zeroing in on my work, whereas before I was so scattered with all the possibilities of the city and things to do and constant contact and variety that I found it very hard to really sit down and get to work. And so it really has been a very good thing for me. I've learned to discipline myself, and I work regularly, and I've gotten a lot done here. The rural situation seems to enable me to concentrate on my work. There aren't a lot of things forcing me out of my shop to run out and do, so I spend much more of my time working. I chose the life of an independent artist because I like to set my own pace and create my own working environment. But as yet, there don't seem to be enough channels of communication between craftspeople in Vermont.
In a classroom studio overlooking Middlebury's Otter Creek, Judith Bryant has spent the past 3 years of her career sharing her talent and space as resident potter for the Vermont State Craft Center at Frog Hollow.
What I want to show you tonight is, if I can get this centered, is throwing a collar on the wheel.
A lot of craftspeople like working in isolation, whether it's in Vermont or any other state. We're used to setting our own pace, running our own show, especially those of us who, when we're doing our own work, work alone and don't share a studio.
Score it and get some slip on there before I add the
Having the
collar.
opportunity to teach is an important one for me. I miss it when I don't do it. I miss the people. I miss the contact. Oh, I have dreams of having a studio tucked away, sometimes when there are hordes of people coming through here, and I feel like, when am I ever going to have any privacy? But I suspect that privacy would pall pretty quickly for me. I need that kind of interaction with my students.
At the beginning, I think I felt more comfortable teaching than I did doing my own work. I preferred to concentrate on that. I was interested in it. That was about 9.5 years ago.
And I did everything myself. I ran the studio, I mixed all the clay, I looked after everything involved with the studio and found very little time to do my own work. Now I scavenge time wherever I can. And I still love teaching, and it's important to me to do it, but finding time for my own work becomes more and more important. The realities of making a living seem to me to be harder when you're self-employed. One of the most severe problems, economic problems, in being self-employed is you're completely on your own. There's no insurance benefits. Right now, especially with my baby due in a month, I think it would be very nice to have an employer that paid insurance for me so that I wouldn't have to be figuring out the cost of doctors and hospitals, a nursery for the baby, and so forth. But so far, I've never had any insurance at all. I just walk very carefully on the ice and try not to break my arm or do anything that involves going to the doctor. I think there's a lot of people in the same boat with me. No benefits except what we can provide ourselves. I think about how I would feel doing some other job. And even if it were 8 hours a day, clear cut, and I could leave at the end of the day, not think about it, as opposed to my 12 and 14-hour days sometimes here. I really can't imagine doing anything else. I like what I'm doing. I like the feel of the clay. I like almost all processes of working with clay. I like the teaching. And I don't think I could say that about any other sort of job that I could imagine doing.
There were a number of pewterers in the 18th century who were my ancestors, who have served as an inspiration for me, both because I've appreciated their work, and I identify with the time in which they were working. It was a very difficult time economically, and they were starting something from scratch in the new world.
Despite his ancestral connection with pewter making, Fred Danforth was originally introduced to the craft by his wife. Since their marriage and merger, the Danforths have managed to establish both a bustling trade and a family.
I think our partnership is kind of a stroke of luck. We're able to work together quite well in the shop. Fred has, over the years, taken to certain phases of the process, and I to others. I think we have mutual respect for each other's abilities and differences. We approach our work differently in a lot of ways, but compatibly. We work together on our designs, starting with a thought of a specific piece that we want to make and bringing it through. Our lines are simple. We feel that the metal speaks for itself in a lot of ways, and we keep it simple. So that makes it nice for function, and we're very concerned about function.
Here we go. One glove. Two gloves.
Did you get all the fingers in the right hole?
Our business evolves around where our family is.
Got one empty one.
Trying to be flexible and include them and yet not have it be a drain on them. We wanted to have a family. It was a choice. And we also, because of that choice, realized that there would have to be some changes made. When we started working and got our business going, both of us were in the shop often 7 days a week and a few nights. And then when we started having our family, it was obvious that I would be out of the shop for a while. It was a conscious choice, and it was a decision that certainly had its effects that I couldn't predict, how it really affected me. But we were able to have a spacing between our two children of 3 years, which enabled me to get back into the shop and know that I could do it, that I wasn't going to just have it phase out of my life and just become, you know, only a mom and a housewife.
I think about my future in financial terms sometimes, but the insecurity which we experience is something we just accept.
One aspect of being a craftsperson in Vermont is knowing that there are a lot of other craftspeople out there coping with the same difficulties and situations that we are. It's really heartening to know that we're not alone in this.
At age 55, I decided to think about what I was going to do when I entered into what I refer to as my change in orientation. Other people refer to it as retirement. I had to have something to do, and it had to be important. I don't like hobbies. I have interests, major interests and minor interests, but no hobbies. There's something weak about the term hobby, insincere, so I prefer major interests. And one day I made a piece of furniture for my oldest son, and then I realized what I really wanted to do was make fine furniture.
Since retiring, former banker and Army officer Gordon Brettschneider has devoted himself to creating what he calls semi-reproduction furniture.
The furniture that we make is essentially made in the same manner as the early fine cabinet makers. And as a result, that furniture should last just as long as the furniture that they made. So that was the first thing that came out of using the old techniques. The second thing is, I don't believe many pieces of furniture commercially approach this sort of detail. I enjoy making the furniture that I make. I enjoy doing every aspect of it. I get a certain amount of pleasure out of making something. It's the act of doing it and doing it as well as I can that is important to me. So you must enjoy what you're doing. And if you enjoy what you're doing, it almost follows that the work itself will be the best possible work you can do. I feel certain that some people have bought our furniture with the idea of having it as an heirloom to hand down to their children. That excites me. At least that makes me enthusiastic towards the client or the customer. I will price the product that I make at what I consider a fair price. And if people don't buy it, I will not lower my price until someone buys it. I think I'm worthy of my hire like any other craftsman is, and therefore I will wait. And so far, my judgment has been correct. I waited 4 years to sell a desk. And I think the people who bought it will give it tender, loving care. And they're the people we want to have it.
Good. Nice smile. There it is.
When Mary Lynn O'Shea decides it's time to update her product catalog, she hires a professional model and photographer. It just makes good business sense. And if 13 years as a professional weaver have taught her anything, it's that her craft is a business.
Okay. I really only have one product, and that's triangular shawls. And I think that's one of the main reasons that it's been so successful, is that I stick to a basic thing. And I think that's the key to it, is to just be making something you truly think is the best thing you can make and the most beautiful thing you can make. And I think there's a market for it. Is this one weaving all right? Realistically, you have to have people working for you to make a living.
if I were to be weaving by myself on a loom, I could, maybe get one shawl done every 2 days. Having 5 people helping me, we're getting 5 shawls done a day. And that's the amount we need, to make enough money to make it work. The price is still $90, but it might go up after the holiday. And you'd have to order 6. We're really busy year-round. But what I do to stay busy and to keep the people who are working for me busy is to get on the road and go where the business is. So I have things more like 2 stores in Vermont, 2 in California, 2 in Arizona. I sell, everywhere. Most of my business is out of state. It seems that it would be really difficult to make all of your money in Vermont. The way I get my business is that I go to craft fairs all over the country, and in the large ones, they have wholesale days and retail days. And on the wholesale days, buyers come from all over the country and place orders. What that allows me is that it allows me to sit in Vermont and do what I do and be able to ship things out all over the country. I don't think I feel isolated here because I get out into the world so much. With the business, I get to travel. We go all over the country to different shows. And by the time I've been, say, at a show in New York for a week, I'm ready to come back to Vermont. I love the house. It's just kind of a personal vision of my own world. I really love the isolation and the privateness because people can't find me. In other words, I'm out there and I'm on and I'm selling things and it's really exciting, but then I can come back here and I can have solitude and peace to create what I need to create. I have to be in Vermont to be an artist. To me, art is who you are and what you are, and I need to be here in this kind of environment to do what I do. Basically, I've always been a weaver. I've changed how I've done it, but I'm always a weaver. I think that's a basic part of who I am.
I get a certain amount of pleasure out of making something. It's the act of doing it and doing it as well as I can that is important to me.
My interest is more in doing the job the way I want to do it. My effort isn't really rewarded by money.
Is to just be making something you truly think is the best thing you can make and the most beautiful thing you can make.
Funding for the preceding program was provided in part by the National Endowment for the Arts.